Good evening. I know you can't hear, or I can't hear you. I apologize for that. I'm going to let people join as we go here. Due to the problems that we had last time, I decided to have mute on the participants for this one. So hopefully you can understand that. Right now, I'm told that there's supposed to be roughly 200 people joining, so we'll see what happens. Obviously, we've got people from all around the world again, which is, again, for me, is quite exciting, just to share some different thoughts. I will lock the meeting, just again, if you were on last time, I will lock the meeting after about 10 minutes. I believe if you like, you can unmute yourself, I believe. And then we'll finish right in time for the MLS playoffs tonight, which I think it's Kansas tonight who plays. So that comes on at 9:30. We'll be done before then, so plenty of time to tune into that. I see Willie's on from the West Coast there.
How are you, Phil?
Very good, thank you. How are you?
Oh, not too bad, thanks.
And we have Ahmed from Singapore. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. I'm not sure what the time is in Singapore, but I'm sure it's very different to where I am right now. So again, thank you for joining us. Yeah, I'm sure Florida's quite nice. It's not, it's not quite the same here. It dropped to about, I want to say 40 degrees here today. So it's winter's on the way for sure, but that's okay. We've got Jason as well from Trinidad. How are you, sir? Are you doing all right? So right now we've got more internationals than we have Americans, which is good. Again, we're supposed to have roughly 200 people joining us. Right now we're at 10, it says. So I will at about 8:05, I will close the meeting, lock the meeting, so that we don't get interrupted like we did last time. I have to keep taking my glasses on and off because I don't typically wear glasses, but anything really tiny, I can't see. So that's what happens when you get wiser, I'm told, not older. Yeah, Glenn, if you're in New Jersey, I'm in Delaware, so we're living the same thing right now. Temperature drop of almost 30 degrees from yesterday. So I'm going to go out tomorrow with our Union 2 group, with our second team. It's going to be pretty cold and nice and windy as well. You're very welcome, Jason. Again, the idea is just to share information. Doesn't make it right or wrong. Just sharing information based on experience. And tonight we're going to talk about keeping training sessions fresh, which is something that we all have a challenge with. Doesn't matter where you are, who you're working with, mixing it up and keeping it fresh is often a challenge. So again, I'm just going to share some experiences along those lines, and hopefully spark some thoughts, maybe even spark some discussion and some questions. We'll see. And I know that there are going to be quite a few people coming on from different parts of the country. Young Mr. Mellor, I see you there. Good to see you. Nice polo shirt. I didn't call you and tell you to wear that, but it's good to see. And again, we've got people from all over the world, which is again very humbling, very exciting, very humbling. And if we can all share a message and learn from each other, then I think we're doing the right thing. And hopefully, at some point, the powers that be in the US come up with some goalkeeper licensing from the grassroots up that we can all benefit from. And I'm not going to get into that because that could be a conversation all on its own, and we could be on all night, but we won't be. So I see Prince is on again. Thank you for joining us. Again, people from all over the world are on at the moment. So again, I really appreciate your time. As I said, it's just gone 8. We're going to lock the room, lock the meeting at 8:05. So if you know people that were going to hop on and they don't get on, I apologize in advance, but I don't want to be interrupted like we were last time. It's very good to see some familiar faces. So again, I appreciate you logging on. And I know that there's going to be some very interesting people logging on. I've been told that one of my goalkeepers is going to log on, so I better be nice to him. We'll see. From Nairobi, Kenya, Abdul, thank you for logging on and joining us. Really appreciate it. Again, this is just an opportunity to share information. Again, doesn't make it, for those people just logging on, doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just sharing information and trying to help each other as we all go through our seasons, through our challenges in goalkeeping, through our challenges in virtual goalkeeping, through our challenges in trying to help those people that we care about the most, and those are the athletes that we work with on a day-to-day basis. So I thank you for sharing your passion with me and allowing me just to have an hour of your time. So again, we'll lock the room in a few minutes here, and we'll get started. What I've tried to do tonight is I've tried to make sure that we have plenty of time for any questions that you might have, so that we can have a little bit more of a discussion. I did get quite a lot of emails last time and questions, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Again, the video, this is being recorded, so this will be put on YouTube. I will make a PDF of the presentation. This has less statistics and things like that in it, but so it becomes less personal, if you like. So hopefully that'll be of more benefit to you. Statistics only give us a snapshot of what data points we're looking for. So as a coach, obviously we don't base a whole lot of things on statistics other than perhaps workload. So hopefully tonight we can talk a little bit more about the actual training part of working with goalkeepers. Eric, thanks for joining us. And Prince, we've got people from all over, so it's great to have you. Ahmed, thank you for joining us from Egypt. Hopefully one day I'll get there. Who knows? It's always been in the plans, but has never happened. So maybe someday. Again, the purpose of tonight will be to talk about relevance of training sessions and keeping it fresh. And then we also will talk about the number 1, the number 2, and the number 3 in your goalkeeping core, because that is, in my mind, that's a very critical element of how you work with different goalkeepers within your goalkeeper group. We'll also talk about a little bit about the training of the youth goalkeeper and how this all pertains to the youth goalkeeper, because that is obviously the grassroots is where this all starts. So working with the youth all the way through to the professional level. Okay, I'm going to give it 2 more minutes and then we will lock the room and we'll get started. And again, it's great to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces. So again, thank you for allowing me to have this opportunity just to talk to you about goalkeeping, a little bit of goalkeeping education, and just share a few words. And if obviously, as most of you know, I'm very, very fortunate to be sponsored by Sport and work with Sport. And it was nice to see Edison in Sport gloves today playing for Man City. So obviously, they're doing something right. Not that I'm a Man City fan, by the way. Just want to clarify that. Definitely not. So again, we'll wait 1 more minute and then we're going to lock the room. We had 200 people signed up, but as I said, for our sake of keeping the security of the Zoom, I want to make sure that the experience isn't ruined as it was last time a little bit by people trying to jump in and hack. So I'm sure you can all appreciate that. Heather is on here as well. So she's on the lookout. Heather is the person that does a lot of, or most of the social media to do with IGCC. So, you know, this actually gives me a platform to publicly thank you, Heather, for everything that you do. And people are just, now people are texting to get on. So like I said, we've got about 30 seconds and I'm going to lock the room and then we will begin. Again, it's wonderful to see so many familiar faces. And see the names and not see some faces. I've been told I look better in the dark, so that's never a good starting point. All right, so coaches, I'm gonna lock the room. I think that's probably the best thing to do at this point, and we'll get started. So. I apologize in advance to everyone else who is trying to get on that cannot get on. But now the room is locked, the meeting is locked, so no one else can join. So hopefully this can be shared as we move through onto YouTube and other platforms. So we'll get started. I'm going to share my screen. We'll get started on our topic for today. And let's see, Willie, can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen, if it's come up all right? Awesome, thank you, sir. So again, thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you again to all the people that work with me, that sponsor me, that are part of the IGCC. And as I've said, thank you so much to Heather and 710 Studios for the awesome job you do on social media and helping us achieve our goal. For those of you that don't know me, just something really quick. Tonight's session is about keeping sessions relevant and fresh through the season. For those of you, as I said, that don't know me, I've had the fortune to work with a lot of different groups, whether it's the men's national team, women's national team. I've been in and out of the MLS. I was in the Women's Professional League with the WSA. The person that has led me on my path and is actually on the Zoom tonight is Peter Meller. So for those of you that know him, again, it gives me an opportunity to publicly thank Peter for helping me steer the ship in the right direction, and hopefully I'll continue to do so. So getting started, first and foremost, I'll take it back to the session that we had a couple of weeks ago. First and foremost, when we're talking about training, when we're talking about keeping it relevant and fresh through the season, the one thing that I'll always start with is, does your training look like the game? Are your goalkeepers performing actions that they'll do in the game? Are they performing actions in an appropriate place on the field? So that's the realism aspect, the reps versus realism. Are they in a challenging environment? Are they pushed? Are they stretched in what they're doing? Is the service realistic? And I am zooming through this because this was one of the slides I showed in the last meeting. Is the service realistic? Is it at the right pace from the right angles? Is it a moving or a stationary ball? Is it a volley or a still ball? So are these things, are we taking these things into account when we first start to talk about our training sessions? How are your sessions planned and designed? Do you have a process, and what is your process? And then finally, do you have a desired outcome? Everything that we do, every session that we have, we should have a desired outcome. My way of planning sessions throughout the season and trying to keep it fresh is going with the big picture and then trying to chunk it back from there. So at the end of the session, we really get to the images and the scenarios that I'm trying to get to from the start. So having a desired outcome, if there's one thing that you get out of this tonight, is about the planning of your sessions, getting that desired outcome right at the end. Some coaches around the world, and I've done a lot of learning from other people. Some coaches in different parts of the world actually don't have a sequential and progressive order in what they're doing. What they do is they have a situational environment in every stage of their training session, and the training session just gets more and more complex as the sessions go on. So instead of having a progressive session, they just have a scenario that just builds and builds into a more complex situation, which is something that I've taken on board in a lot of the stuff that I do, and we'll talk about that a little bit in here tonight. So determining your starting point. I'm going to take this from a seasonal perspective. From a coach's point of view, you may take this from a monthly perspective, depending on who you're working with. So the first thing, and for me as a goalkeeper coach, I came into a new situation in January. So January 1st, I started a new position as the director of goalkeeping and first team goalkeeper coach for the Philadelphia Union in the MLS. So I'm taking this from a season-long perspective and looking at how we manage to keep things fresh throughout the course of the season. So the starting point was actually a meeting of the minds. The starting point was myself talking to the head coach, myself talking to each of the goalkeepers to get to know him. I'm going to say him because I was dealing with a male, and getting to know the goalkeeping core. And it was reflecting and looking at how things have gone in the past for the particular goalkeepers that I'm working with. And this is something as a coach, I think that we often overlook. I think sometimes as coaches, we come into an environment and say, this is how it's going to be. And we want to put our stamp on it and make it ours. When sometimes that can be met with a lot of resistance, especially when you're dealing with people that are almost set in their ways. So sometimes it's a great idea just to ease yourself in and have a meeting of the minds and discuss what makes him or her tick, what makes him or her work hard, how do I get the best out of him or her. So secondly, when you're looking at a starting point, obviously there's a calendar involved. And what does your season look like? If you're working in the youth game and you're not working with a specific team and you're training teams or you're training goalkeepers for clubs, what does that look like throughout the course of the year? So, or through the season? Do you start in mid-August and the season's over in October? If that's the case, or the season's over in November, how do you work around that if you're training the goalkeepers twice a week, and what is your plan going to be? And then, quite honestly, there's a lot of trial and error. And as players, and in the environments we create, we create environments that players can fail in, and that failing is how we learn. We're all human, so we will all fail. But trial and error as a coach is also part of our development. Trying a session, trying an exercise that you think might work, and it doesn't work. So you have to adapt it, and that's coaching. That's the art of coaching. And goalkeeper coaching is an art. It's something that we have to work on. It's something we have to perfect. And as with any piece of art, there's always a brush stroke that could have been done differently. There's always something that could be tweaked. Someone can always add something to a picture. So trial and error is something that happens on a daily basis. So some considerations. And my consideration, the thing that I go to first and foremost, is always the game. The game is the best teacher. The game will tell us everything that we need to know. And we talked about that a little bit in our last meeting. So the game will show us the strengths and weaknesses of our goalkeeper in every area. The game will show us decision-making. The game will show us distribution, in possession, out of possession. It will give us a snapshot of the goalkeeper's level that we're working with. And that might be a 7-year-old, it might be a 9-year-old, it might be a 25-year-old. It's all going to be different for everyone that's on this Zoom with us tonight. But as we look at this, the considerations around the game, there are often 4 pillars. And the 4 pillars of the game are the technical, tactical, physical, and psychosocial, or psychological. I think that the psychological aspect is such a big aspect that it actually should be broken into 2, because there's the ability to deal with mistakes and the ability to be confident, and how do we deal with that? And then we have leadership. Goalkeepers are natural leaders. We are leaders by our position. We are in charge at the back. We should communicate. We should be able to do that. Leadership and dealing with the social element of the team is different than dealing with mistakes. It's different than confidence, in my opinion. So in the model that I work with, we actually have 5 pillars. And you might ask, is 5 pillars better than 4 pillars? I don't know. That's a matter of opinion. But this is the model that I've been working with the group of goalkeepers that I work with, and also with the staff that I work with within the club. This is something with the leadership point of view that everyone on the call, doesn't matter whether you're dealing with U9s or whether you're dealing with a 30-year-old, leadership and the social element of being on a team and managing the social environment is very, very difficult. But I also think it's very different than the psychological aspect of managing the environment as far as mistakes go. So these are some considerations, and I urge you, as we go through this call, I'm dealing with 3 professional goalkeepers, and your environment may be different. Obviously, we're dealing with professional goalkeepers in a professional game in a full-size goal. You might be dealing with 9-year-olds who are not playing in a full-size goal. So everything that we talk about, I would encourage you to relate it to the game that you play and the game that you're preparing players to play. So one thing that US Soccer did years ago was they came up with the 5 Ws. And I actually thought that this was a really, really good way of starting your planning and looking at things. So who are you training? Are you training the number one, the number two, the number three, all of them together? Are you training a group? Are you training, who is it that you're training? When are you training them? Is it a time per week? So like I said, with a club, you might be training them twice, 3 times, maybe 4 times a week. Is it a monthly thing, or is it a season-long thing that you're trying to plan and work with? The why. Why are we training them? What are they working towards? Is it competition? Are we looking for a rotation within the group? Is it a season-long thing? Are we bringing them back from injury, which is a common thing as you get into the older age groups for sure? And managing that injury aspect. What are we training? The game will tell us that. The game will tell you everything you need to know about your goalkeepers. Sometimes it will be geared towards a group of goalkeepers, and the game will actually allow us to be more individualized. And then where? The area on the pitch where something occurs. Where does it occur? Are we training goalkeepers in an appropriate place on the pitch? So, and this is something I'll come back to, because the appropriate area on the pitch to do your training should be one spot and one spot only. And that should be the goal area. So, but we'll talk about that as we move through. So periodizing your plan. This is quite accurate to what happened to me in January. So I was given this calendar, and here's our pre-season calendar, and you can see we've got after the 28th, it's game, 2 days, game, 3 days, game, and then you're off for a bit. Actually flew home and then flew back again, and then you got 4 games again. So really it was a training rhythm where how much development are you doing in that period of time? We'll talk about this, because the development versus preparation is a big debate. So this was what I started with. And where do we go 2 times a day? Where do we go once a day? Where do we not go at all? On a game day, what do I do with the number 2 and the number 3? Are we playing 2 goalkeepers? Are we splitting the game? Are we playing 1 goalkeeper? What does the periodization look like for the other goalkeepers that are concerned? So all these things you need to take into account as you go through your season and progress. So the starting point, for those of you that are working with a team, it's important to know where the goals come from. It's important to do some research, and sometimes after the season is done, you look back and you say, oh, we conceded X amount of goals, and you move on. We're not going to do that next year. Or if you come into a job, and you say, well, this team conceded X amount of goals, we're not going to do that this year. So really doing some homework and finding out where the goals come from. So when I took this position, this was a snapshot that I came up with. In 2019, the team played 34 games and conceded 50 goals. So that's 1.47 goals per game. So I looked at this. I looked at the shot maps, and fortunately there is software that produces this, which is kind of nice. So I looked at the shot maps and I compared it with every other team in the MLS. And the things that stood out to me were the number of balls that, when you look on the left-hand side where you see the goal, the number of balls that were scored high versus scored low. So we have a lot of goalkeeper coaches that are with us tonight, and on Instagram and on Twitter and on Facebook and on all over social media, you'll see goalkeepers flying all over the place, doing cartwheels, jumping through things, over things, round things, and diving into top corners. You can see the number of goals that went in above the waist versus below the waist. So right off the bat, as a coach, I looked at this and said, okay, you as coaches would look at this and probably say, okay, well, the higher percentage of goals go in below waist height. Right? That to me is a no-brainer. Okay, so for the coaches that spend hours and hours and hours doing the showboat diving and I don't know what I'm guessing there's a new term for it, but power diving and all that people call it, is rarely used. Having said that, the goalkeeper that we have in our system as our number one is very, very athletic and covers the ground really well and can make a ton of those types of saves. He's also quick getting down low. So you look at the goals that were scored playing down low, and that for me became a bit of a priority. If you look at the pitch, this was alarming to me. And when you look at where the goals are scored from, the number of goals in 34 games that were scored from outside the area is too much. There were 11 goals scored from outside the area. 2 of those were set pieces. So that means 9 goals were scored in the run of play from outside the area, which for a professional level, that's quite high. And it was one of the highest in the MLS last year. The area between the 6-yard box and the penalty and the top of the 18-yard box, you expect to see most of the balls being scored from those areas. That's the red zone. That's where everyone tries to get to. Those are the cutbacks. Those are the balls that whipped across and finished first time. That's an area that you expect to see a lot of goals. The other concern is obviously the 6-yard box. There were 13 goals scored in and around the 6-yard box, which either means set pieces or rebounds. It might mean that a ball was, it might mean that it came off someone's leg inside the 6-yard box and was deflected. Could mean a bunch of things. But this was the starting point for me when I'm looking at how we're going to develop our goalkeepers through the season. So as a goalkeeper coach looking to keep things relevant, as a goalkeeper coach looking to keep things fresh, you must know your why. Again, I made a statement before about goalkeeper coaches on Instagram and all that, doing all these diving and exercises that to me personally may not make sense. But instead of criticizing the exercise, before I do so, I should know why. So as a goalkeeper coach, when you're working with goalkeepers of any age, what is the reason you're doing it? Why are you doing it? What is your outcome from doing it? You've got to understand the process. So if you can understand the process and get your desired outcome, that is your why. Knowing your players and the environment and what environment gets the most out of them is critical. I came into a situation where I didn't really know the players, and I certainly didn't know the environment that was going to get the most out of them. One of the biggest things and the biggest piece of advice that I could give to any coach that's with us tonight is to listen to the players that you work with, especially if you're working with older players. Learn from them and adapt. And again, instead of coming in and saying, this is the way we're going to do it, having an approach of trying to understand them as people, understand them as athletes and what makes them work, and try and mesh that with your personal philosophy and your personal beliefs, I can guarantee you that is a recipe for success. And I go back to now that point that I said, where, the 5 W's, where on the pitch. And just a quick story, and this is something that I've done for years and years, and I bet every goalkeeper coach on the call does it as well, or has done it. We do an exercise, we do something over cones, or we do something where we're working with cones, and at the end of the line of cones or something, it is the white line. It's a white line, and so the goalkeeper goes through the cones or hops over something and then sets on the line. And I did this in pre-season. So I set up a footwork exercise, and it was sort of behind. It was outside of the goal, and it was behind the pitch. And they ended they ended on the white line. So they're moving towards the pitch. They ended on the line, made the save on the line. And one of the goalkeepers says to me, "Why are we saving on the line?" I said, "Well, that's sort of just where the cones, and it's a nice visual for." He said, "Yeah, but we never set on the line. Even on the penalty, we cheat." And I was like, "That's unbelievable." Like here I am at well, obviously I'm like 21 years old. So here I am at 21 years old, and someone's telling me, I'm listening to a professional goalkeeper tell me, we don't set here. This isn't relevant necessarily to where we want to be in the goal. So think about that. Think about the number of exercises that you do as a coach where the goalkeeper actually works either along a line or ends up on the line. It's quite surprising. When you think back in the sessions that you've done, it's quite surprising. So now I don't do that at all, because we spend so much time. How many questions do we get as goalkeeper coaches where people say, "I can't get my goalkeeper to get off the line. He or she stays too close to the line." Well, if we train them to be on that line all the time, obviously they're going to be more inclined to be there. So just a little bit that I'll throw out to you, because I learned and adapted from there. So I try and do everything I can as much as possible in front of the goal, in a relevant position, from a relevant angle. If we're doing distribution, if we're doing stuff dealing with back passes, I try and do that at the top of the box, in a position that the goalkeeper would be if he or she was dealing with a ball that was being passed back, or a through ball. So just something to think about as you plan your sessions. So knowing your why, being able to put your goalkeepers in positions to succeed. So the pre-season phase, and this is a getting to know you type situation. So the focus as you go into a pre-season is, for many of us, it's a reintroduction to all areas of goalkeeping. And a reintroduction means you're touching on all the basics. You're touching on everything as you go. You're developing relationships, and this is massively important, as you know. All right, a relationship, a give and take with the goalkeepers. As goalkeeper coaches, our relationships are vastly different with the goalkeepers than they are than the goalkeepers have with any other member of staff. It's always an evaluation in pre-season. So again, and I'm not going to go chronologically through the year, so don't worry about that. This is just a base for how to keep it fresh. So everything is an evaluation. In the early part of the year, and this is just my personal preference, that goalkeepers are coming back from a break. So imagine goalkeepers coming back if you're in college, and I know some of the people are in college here, coaching in universities. They come back after a break, after whether it's Thanksgiving, whether it's the winter and you're going into spring season, or in a normal year, or you're coming back for pre-season. You've got to build resistance in the body to the work that you're doing, for the work that you're doing and that they are going to do. One of the things that I've always recognized is if players have a day or more of rest, typically that first session back is not the sharpest. And as coaches, and I know that we've also got head coaches and managers on the Zoom meeting here tonight, we lose our minds because they're not sharp enough the day after they come back from a break. But again, we as coaches need to understand that it takes some getting used to, getting back in the flow. So my philosophy in when they come back from a break, and this is also in season, is I've got them doing fast actions, maybe 3 total goalkeeping actions, and that might be 2 saves and a distribution, or it might be 3 saves. But fast actions, not a ton of thinking, and just getting their bodies back into building that resistance. So I'm going to show you 2 very brief videos. They're exactly the same, but they're from different angles. Okay. The first one you're going to see is from the side. You'll see each of the goalkeepers. You'll see 1 rep from each goalkeeper. The ball starts with me. I strike a ball. I give them a visual task. So I'll say blue or red. and then they must turn towards that side, perform a blocking save, and then get back to protect the two small goals that you see in the goal. So you'll see it from the side first, and then you'll see exactly the same actions from the back. So here we go. Okay, so again, 3 quick actions, a little tiny bit of thinking, but they perform a certain task. So here's exactly the same from the back. Bear in mind that this is first couple of days in pre-season, and think about what I just told you about the looking at that shot map and where the balls go in. So each one of those shots was around the top of those small goals and below. So all I asked them to do was to defend those small goals. So again, now we've got fast actions. They've got a purpose. They have to think and respond to a verbal cue. And now we're building some resistance, accelerations and decelerations, and some resistance within their bodies. So again, as a goalkeeper coach, bringing people back from a long break, I think it's important to get their bodies used to the progression of the goalkeeping position. So now the reintroduction, again, knowing your expectations, managing the environment. And one of the things that we often do is the environment that we create can be too complex, or we can go completely the other way and make it dull and boring. So managing your environment to make it interesting. And sometimes when you're talking about keeping things relevant and fresh, sometimes that might be just putting a mannequin in a certain spot. That changes the environment completely. Putting a rebounder, so you play a ball off of a rebounder, get it back and take a touch, changes the environment completely. So keeping it fresh and relevant. So for example, say you get playing against a team that has a target forward and that ball comes into he or she and they lay it off, and now there's a shot. By using a rebounder, you can try and replicate that. So managing the environment and making sure it's applicable to the game. One of the things that I was fortunate enough to have this year was an unbelievable group that worked with our players on strength and conditioning. One of our assistant coaches is fantastic in the way that he thinks about the game. And first and foremost, he's a coach, which is really important. So our goalkeepers would do activation. So as we went into each day, our goalkeepers would do activation based upon the exercises that we were going to do. So as you can probably guess, there's going to be a lot of jumping involved. So we were going to work on crossing. And again, being prepared for the activity is important. Again, you see a few different activities here where, you know, one of our assistant coaches is just taking the goalkeepers through these motions, which I then almost replicate with a ball. So different shoulder mobility with resistance, a lot of jumping type activities, explosive activities that keep our goalkeepers fresh. One of the things that I've also noticed in the course of time is if the goalkeeper is always with the goalkeeper coach from the minute that they show up to the minute they go with a team, sometimes over the course of a season, that can get dull and boring. They need a different voice at times. So having someone like this coach that we're fortunate to have has been absolutely fantastic in helping our goalkeepers prepare. This is not my area of expertise. Strength and conditioning is not my area of expertise. It is his, as well as playing the game of football, but it's certainly something that I've grown to appreciate. So we go from that into, and obviously, as I said, we've done some simple work before this, some simple plyometrics with the ball. This is the very first time we're doing anything to do with crosses with these three goalkeepers. I very rarely throw the ball, but when I do, it's only for a repetitive motion. I'm trying to get their footwork. It's not about their hands. It's about the footwork and the ability to jump off of their feet. So there are three different goalkeepers, three different ways of moving. It's not great to throw the ball in the goal though. Again, very simple setup. And as this is going, you'll see the goalkeepers retreat into the goal. So retreat into the goal and then potentially come back out. Retreat into the goal and then deal with the service. In swinging and out swinging. And obviously they rotate goals, so they're seeing balls from both sides. And again, different movements, different service. It's not scripted necessarily. All they know is that they have to come for the ball. If the ball continues through, the person at the back would finish it. Okay, so just think about that exercise there and what you could do. You could use that same setup and change it 10 different ways. And one of our goalkeepers actually gave me a compliment a few weeks back, and he said, I don't think we've done the same session twice throughout the whole season. And and quietly as a goalkeeper coach, you think, well, actually we have. I've had the same setup and I've just moved this and this and changed the outcome, changed the start point of the ball. So that was the reintroduction. So keeping it relevant. Again, does it look like the game or the opponent? And that for me is a critical piece. Does it look like the game or the opponent? So if you're working for a team, and there's people again that are on here that work with high level teams, both in the US and outside the US, does it look like the game or the opponent? Does it have tendencies of the opponent? Are you able to replicate the service of the opponent? So for those of you, again, I work with the Philadelphia Union. We played the New England Revolution 6 times this year. I mean, 6 times. So by the end of it, you know, I could serve most of the balls like some of their players. But are you able to replicate the service? And if you're not personally, for those of you that know me, my left foot is more like a kickstand than it is anything else. So one of our goalkeepers is left-footed. The other 2 have a decent left foot. So when it comes to having real quality service with the left foot, I try and put them in the place to serve it. So are we able to replicate the service? Are we working in possession or out of possession, or both together? Both together. So what is the goalkeeper doing with the ball when he or she receives it? Are they able to make a decision after they maintain possession of the ball? And that's one of the things that we often overlook. We think as goalkeeper coaches in our sessions, we look at it and we say, well, they're making a saving decision. But one of the decisions we have to make the most, and it often hurts us or hurts the team, one of the things we have to make the most is it an in possession decision that we have to make? So adding that to the mix is really important. And then your planning and preparation process. Again, as I said, you could take that exercise, change it 10 different ways to make it applicable to something totally different. And right off the top of my head, I would say you could turn that into a cutback exercise very, very simply. That would be very easy to do. So I'm going to challenge you as coaches that are with me now tonight. Take those 2 goals, put 2 mannequins in there, see how many different things you can make up from it. And then as far as keeping it relevant, this is something that a lot of times we don't do enough of. And I've certainly been guilty of this. Reflection to the exercises that we've done, reflection on the sessions that we've done. Each one of my sessions is videotaped. So, and I clip the video and get it to the goalkeepers typically before they leave the building. So it's videotaped, so I can reflect on the session as I'm clipping the video. The reaction part of that is, how do I make it better? There's no point reflecting on something if there's no action afterwards. So what is the action after the reflection? How can I make it better? How can I serve my goalkeepers better as we go through this? So keeping it relevant. Again, does it look like the game or the opponent? So one of the things that we do a lot is, as coaches, we break down actions. And we often look at the end piece of it. So here's something, again, this is not the first activity that they've done. They've done some flexibility activities before this. This again was in this was actually in season before we were going to play a game against LAFC. So I'm trying to, and bear with me on this, I'm trying to look at what happens when the ball drops 4 yards from the goal. So, or the ball is played 4 yards from the goal. Very simple. The ball comes in from the side. It can go to me, who I'm on the other side, or it can go into the goalkeeper, who's nicely matched his gloves and his boots, because that is really important. It can go into him, can go to either goal. Everything is live. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so without doing a breakdown of activities, without going and saying, okay, we're going to work on this, this, and this, already we've got defending a space in front of the goal. So you're defending 4 yards in front of the goal. As you heard me, I gave a time. So it was a 45-second burst. I didn't show you the full 45. All right, so there's a 45-second training burst, if you like. So the goalkeepers, if they can pick the ball off, they pick the ball off. If they have to block, they block. They're defending 2 small goals. If they need to dive, they dive. So everything is about what happens when the ball arrives in this spot at this player's feet. So again, just instead of breaking down the actions into, okay, we're going to work on smothering first and then this, we're trying to create a scenario. So it looks like this, because I'm trying to match sessions with, and this is something through the course of the season. If you videotape games, or if you have the ability to look at games, and if they're not your games, they're someone else's games, what does the game tell you about where these situations occur? Okay, so, and typically these 1v1s occur when the back four is beaten, there's a through ball, or it's a cutback. So can we match our sessions? And the best piece, another piece of advice is, can you match your sessions to real game day situations? Instead of hypotheticals, I wonder if this would work, look at a game, take a look at a game and say, and obviously there's football on TV, soccer on TV, almost every day of the week, which is a blessing. Can we make it look like the game? So, Rodriguez making the run. So again, the ball comes in the 97th minute, just outside the 6-yard box. So can you look at that and say, okay, when a through ball comes through, what's the angle of the through ball? Can we vary those sessions depending on maybe the personalities that we're playing against, to have balls come from angles, to have balls come straight on, to have balls being served over the top? These things are how we keep it fresh, because it does relate to the game. So different ideas on sessions that we've done that have incorporated this type of situation. Again, I talked about having a target forward. A lot of teams have a big, strong player or two up front where that ball comes into him or her, they lay it off or they spin and go to goal. I find that oftentimes we put a lot of restrictions on activities, and you know, what I'm trying to do is create scenarios, create decision-making situations on movements for goalkeepers, because it's the acceleration and deceleration as well as the actual saving technique that is so massively important. So in here, as you can see, there's different start points. I'm not suggesting here that we have 6 players. Sometimes the ball start, we very rarely have more than 4 people in our training session. I'm just trying to indicate different start points here. So the ball could be cut back, the ball could be served, it could be clipped, it could be driven on the ground, it could be laid back, all sorts of things that can happen. And again, this allows you as a coach to coach different topics. The ball arrives here, and here are the possibilities. What are the outcomes? So in my planning, what are the outcomes of when the ball is touched, the player receives the ball and turns? What are those outcomes? When it's laid back, how does that affect the goalkeeper's vertical positioning in the goal? These are things throughout the course of a season that you can adapt and adjust. So again, just by adding a mannequin or 2, things make it very interesting. Okay, we also have transition, where we're now distributing into a 6. If the goalkeeper wins the ball, he or she distributes into the 6, which is the target goal at the other end. Again, all sorts of different scenarios based upon players' movements that are not scripted. So you talk about keeping it fresh and relevant as you go through a season. And yes, there will absolutely be days where we isolate a technique. And oftentimes that is in a warm-up phase of the session. But then, how does that technique apply to the game? So that's one of the things that we do quite a lot, or one of the things I should say that I believe in. So here's the next steps. What did the game demand? So we played our game. What did the game demand? What are the actions that the game demanded? What will the next game demand from a goalkeeping point of view? What were the goalkeeper's main actions? So again, I've told this story a few times where we went to that game in the LAFC, and our goalkeeper played out of his mind. He had a fantastic game. In that game, he saw 10 corners. LAFC were all over us. They should have smashed us. We conceded 10 corners. The goalkeeper saw 10 corner kicks. The last time he saw a ball that started in the corner was in the last match, because we don't train, or we didn't train at that point. We didn't train our corner kicks, our defending corner kicks live. So he hadn't seen a corner for a week, and all of a sudden he's got 10. So from a coach's point of view, I looked at that and said, I failed him. I failed him because one of the goals that we conceded was off of a corner. And if you don't prepare the goalkeeper to see corners, then we're failing. So I looked to myself and I said, I've got to do better to make sure that this goalkeeper and whoever's playing, it doesn't matter whether it's the 1, the 2, or the 3, they have to see more service from that spot. And as we all know, set pieces, and the coaches that are on the call here, how often do we typically train set pieces? Maybe some teams the day before, maybe a couple of times a week, but yet it accounts for a third or more of the goals conceded. So what are the goalkeeper's main actions? Was he or she prepared for the volume? So for example, we had a goalkeeper go into a game recently. He had, 9 goal kicks and played long 15 times. And that was by design, but even he, and I thought he was well prepared for it, even he said, my legs, I was almost cramping at the end, because he was striking more than he actually did in training, or so he thought. So are they prepared for the volume? Were there areas to improve? So the game told us he or she needs to improve in this area. All right. And then what does that next match present? So we're playing this team. They had this. We saw this in our goalkeeper. What does the next match present? And can we merge these two together? Can we merge what the game gave us and what we need for the next game? Can we merge it together in scenarios and situations and keep it? And therefore, you always have a different twist on your training. They may have a super fast right back who gets up the field and serves from a deep spot, gets all the way to the end line and serves. The next game that you play, they may have a super fast left back that has an early service, so serves from almost the top of the 18-yard box and looks to get in behind the back four. So how can you merge this with the different areas that your goalkeepers are looking to improve upon? So now we talk about keeping it fresh. And coaches, we don't have much longer on this, so I appreciate your time. Keeping it fresh. This is a huge part for me. Having competition. And I'll say, I don't know if one of our goalkeepers is on here or not, because I haven't looked at all the names, but I am the crossbar champion for the Philadelphia Union. So keeping it competitive, having fun with the goalkeepers. Is there fun in what you do? Are they competing against each other? Are you able to throw humor in there? What's your personality? And that for me is one of the biggest things in keeping it fresh, and the biggest things of changing the environment. Your personality as a coach can change any environment you walk into. Think about when you walk into a room and your body language is negative. It affects everyone else. Your personality affects everyone else. So it's almost infectious. And the environment that you create, can you create an environment that might be slightly different? And as I said before, it might just be a mannequin. It might be some silly activity you do before training. So this is an activity that you've all seen, okay? And as a coach, you've got to put yourself in there sometimes and be vulnerable, because the players like that, right? Look, celebrating that they messed me up, right? So again, this is in pre-season. Just a fun game, one touch with a hand, one touch with a foot. You can push the mannequin into someone to try and mess them up. And again, I didn't ask them, but I certainly got the feeling that they were all trying to stitch me up on this one. And again, a little bit of discussion, camaraderie, a little bit of banter between them, and it alleviates some of the problems that you see. Right? Again, I mean, celebrating that they're messing me up. So that's a good thing. For me, that's healthy. That's healthy. It means that you've got an environment in which they all feel loose and they feel comfortable, because now I feel like we can push each other. Now I feel like when we get onto the field, there's actually an element of competition that's already been established, all right? And we've also had a little bit of rapport. So as you do these things, just understand that as coaches, sometimes it's important to be vulnerable. It's important to really try and let yourself be accountable in front of the goalkeepers, because you are accountable for the environment that you create. You are accountable for the information you give them on a daily basis. So being vulnerable is a strength in front of your goalkeepers. And obviously I'm talking more in the older age brackets there, as we talk about these being vulnerable. With the younger goalkeepers, it's important also to consider that they may be coming from school. They may be rolling out at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, or sometimes even much later. And they come out and you have lines of cones set up and it's very regimented and it's not very free flowing. Can you create an environment that allows them to relax and feel free and enjoy the environment, and then move into something that's a little bit more structured? That way you actually create an environment of that is positively challenging. So managing this environment, we talked about this a little bit before, the development versus preparation. Are you trying to compete are you trying to build people up, or are you trying to prepare for a game, or both? How do you manage that within your sessions? So knowing who the goalkeepers are and managing your goalkeepers throughout your season becomes important. And I take you back to that slide that I talked about our preseason, where we were going to play 2 goalkeepers in every game. So what did that third do? You've got to have a plan for the players that aren't playing throughout the season. Otherwise, they lose their motivation. Okay, you've got to have the open discussion. You've got to figure out the motivation levels. You've got to come to some arrangement for what's going to work with the goalkeepers that aren't playing. That's how you keep it fresh through the season. Everyone's got to know they're in with a chance. We played 3 goalkeepers this year. So giving them feedback. As a coach personally, and we're all in different situations, as a coach personally, I believe in every one of the goalkeepers that we have in our club. I believe that they have something special, and that's sincere. And I'm not faking that, and I wouldn't fake that, and I tell them to their face. So giving them critical feedback shows them that you care. They know that you care. If you have goalkeepers and you have a reason why you're doing something, knowing your why, they know that you care. They know that you're invested in them. If you're invested in them, you get more out of them. And then that, as a coach, that inspires you more. We want to inspire these goalkeepers. We want to have them explore more about the game, the younger goalkeepers especially. So knowing that you care is important. And this, as we get older, and we're talking about the 16, 17, 18 and into college or professional, managing the load and injury prevention. I was quite happy that our goalkeepers didn't have soft tissue injuries this year. We had jam fingers. We had, I kicked them each once at least. So I'd had a couple of cuts on the legs. We had injuries that occurred in games, but we didn't have soft tissue injuries. So injury prevention and managing their daily workload and being able to have those conversations builds trust. Okay. And then there's your coaching personality. And we touched on this before, recognizing the importance of being human. And for those of you that know me, I'd spend most of my time telling people that goalkeepers and goalkeeper coaches aren't human, because human nature tells us to turn our head and turn our heart away from a ball or an object that's flying towards us. But as a goalkeeper and a goalkeeper coach, we keep our shape, which is not human. But recognize the moments within your season and within each session to be human. How you relate to every goalkeeper is going to be different. So if you're number one, and there were a lot of people that wrote to me and asked me about how do you select your number one? Well, typically the number one selects him or herself based on performance. Sometimes it's not a popular choice, but as a goalkeeper coach, you stick with your choice and you go with it. If you're working with a number one and confidence for him or her is important, I don't know that you give them coaching points. You project coaching points to them. I think you might, with a number one, you might give them coaching points as there's a natural break in the session. Either they're rotating through the exercise, or they've made a save and you're close to them and just say, hey, next time just push your hands a little bit, or something like that. With a number three, you're probably giving them more coaching points. And with a number two, again, depending on who the number two is, you're managing that balance between giving them open coaching points and having a discussion based upon what you saw. So your coaching personality and addressing people as human beings becomes really, really important. So this was the end of our season this year. So 2020, we lost last week. We played 27 games in total, but for 4 of those games didn't count for the regular season. So in the brackets, in the parentheses, there's a regular season. So it's 23 games, 20 goals conceded. So that was 0.86 per game. Now you can see the difference in where the goals were scored from. There's still a few from outside the 18-yard box. 3 of those were free kicks. And the rest, again, still a large number. Inside the 6-yard box, still a large number. Those were knockdowns, back post headers off of corner kicks or the second phase of corner kicks. And so there were 20 goals. 13 of those were in the run of play. Everything else was a set piece. So at the end, keeping it fresh through the season, and you can also see there's a slight change in where the goals were conceded. And again, a lot of these actually ended up, when you go through our season, a lot of them were headers that was served towards the back post or in the second phase of set pieces. So again, as a coaching staff, it's something to look forward to or look at as we progress forward. So conclusions to this Zoom: know your purpose, know your why. What is your purpose? What is your outcome in every session? Take your session, flip it around. How can I make this, and how can I replicate this scenario from a game and put it into training? Start with a bigger picture and then scale it back. Can you create sessions? And this is a challenge to you because it's something different. And if you're working with clubs and you work on a weekly basis, we often say, all right, so we've got an 8-week program. Day 1 is handling, day 2 is diving, week 3 is crosses, week 4 is breakaways, and so on. And we create programs. And that's okay for young kids, but we've got to develop a love for the game. We've got to develop these kids to have fun. So can you create sessions that have a theme, not an action? So balls between the penalty spot and the goal line. So shots from within 12 yards. That's a theme. Could be a 1v1, could be a shot, could be a header, could be anything. So can you create, from a coach's point of view, think about creating things from a theme, not necessarily an end action. Then can you break that theme down into multiple outcomes, as I said before? So, and this is how we keep it fresh through the season. Can you break it into multiple outcomes? And then how do you recreate these outcomes? And that really becomes the art of coaching. So again, I want to thank you for your time and for taking this time to share with me. We'll go to some questions from the chat box. If you have questions, please type them in there. This will be put onto a PDF and will be shared with you. There's another meeting on the 15th. I will tell you now that there will be a guest presenter on the 15th. I will be here, but I will have someone else that will be leading this Zoom. So there'll be a guest presenter. So again, thank you so much for your time. If I can help you in any way whatsoever, there's my email, there's Twitter and Instagram. Message me and I'd be more than happy to talk goalkeeping or help in any way that I possibly can. So coaches, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If we have any questions, I'm very, very happy to answer them. What was your process like to learn quickly how the staff worked? Yes, Lisa, that's a great one. When you go into a new staff, it's always really tricky. It was almost, I asked permission, to be honest with you. I asked the head coach. I'm very respectful to the head coach and the people that I work with. So I try and be professional in everything I do. And that's something that Mr. Mellor taught me years ago. So I try as much as possible to ask permission. And I am told how much time I'm going to have. If I'm told I'm going to get 20 minutes, I may say to the goalkeeper, I may say to the coach, is it okay if we get started as soon as we get out there? Because the way our team works is we get out there onto the pitch, they play around for a little bit, they juggle whatever, the head coach addresses the whole team, and then we train. So on occasions when I know that I'm not going to have a lot of time, I take the goalkeepers right from the start, so they don't join the team when the head coach talks. And so so the isolation of the group is quite simple. I don't necessarily match what the topic is for the team, but oftentimes it coincides. So, some coaches, some goalkeeper coaches ask the head coach, what are we doing today? And they'll say, we're working on crossing and finishing, or that will be part of it. I know in our environment that there will always be close range environments, and there will always be some sort of finishing at the end of training, or 9 times out of 10. So goalkeepers are always prepared for some type of service, whether it's a driven ball that's cut back, or an early service from or a deep service, I should say, from the flanks. So we do an awful lot of service. No, thank you for that question, Lisa. I hope I answered it appropriately. Any plans for the convention? Yes, yeah, we're working on it. We're working on it, believe me. Waiting for the Sunshine State to knock their numbers down so that we can host it. I've been approached by a couple of different places. It will happen as soon as it is safe to do so. It's not, I wouldn't want to put anyone here in jeopardy. I wouldn't want to put presenters in jeopardy. So I'll only do it when it's safe to do it, which I'm sure you can understand. This is a great one, Eric. I love it. In the season, do you recommend an individual session with a number 3? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is something that goes an awful long way. One of the things that we did, especially, so obviously when the pandemic hit, the return to play for us was a tournament in Orlando. The goalkeeper that was not going to be on the bench went and trained. So, and it's something that I established whenever we were home, when we weren't obviously at that tournament, whenever we had a home game, the number 3 would either train the morning or the day of the game, or I would have him join in with the actual pre-game warm-up, which was interesting. And that also, when you think about the separation of players and goalkeepers especially, we have a goalkeeping core, we have a goalkeeping unit, and you take one of those out of there and say you're not involved in game day. All I did was I adjusted our start time. I took our number 2 out about 5 minutes earlier. The 2 of them came out, the number 2 and number 3. And now all of a sudden, the number 3, even though he wasn't dressing, is involved in the game day. He helps manage the load, especially as the season goes on, helps manage the load because, as we all know, at the end of the warm-up, what do the coaches do? Well, they just line the players up and they bombard the goalkeeper and they try and smash him or her. So it actually lightened the load of the number 2, which also then prolongs the career of the number 2, if you like. So keeping them fresh, and number 3 feels part of it. How do you begin teaching goal? So balls behind the back line. How do you teach anticipation? Again, for me, that is part of cues, reading cues. If there is pressure on the ball, then the goalkeeper can be slightly more advanced. If there's no pressure on the ball, the goalkeeper is obviously slightly withdrawn as far as positioning goes. But the one thing that we've talked a lot about with the goalkeepers within our group is, and I go back to a goalkeeper that some of you may remember. His name is Casey Keller. And actually, even Hope Solo did this when she played for the women's national team. They would have a staggered stance. When the other team was in possession, they had a staggered stance, so one foot in front of the other. And I would always look at, and I remember more distinctly, Casey Keller always sort of had one hand on his front knee, if you like. He was leaning forward. And I always thought that was a really odd position for a goalkeeper to stand in when the other team has possession of the ball. But what it was his body weight was transitioning forward. He was putting his body weight forward to say, okay, I'm coming for this ball if it's played through, and then, no, I'm not. And the same for Hope Solo. I'm going to come for this ball. Okay, no, I'm not. or I'm comfortable, and yes, I've already got my first step in there. Instead of standing, waiting, and saying, okay, I'm not going for the ball, and then, oh, I've got to go, and then you're a split second too late. And that's where that indecision and misreading often comes in. So one of the ways is to have the goalkeepers have a mindset of, I am going for this ball, not an emergency, or I've got to go. So I would work on that. And again, you've got to train it. So simple ways to train it. If you've got an 18-yard box, put a line of mannequins, maybe 10 yards outside the 18-yard box, just 4 mannequins, have a ball played in to a target player, played back, and then a ball over the top, or a ball played through. Very, very simple. And you can add players or take players away as you like. So that's a really, really simple way to do it. I'll just answer 2 more quickly. And if I don't answer your question, please feel free to email, text, or call me. Oh, I like this one. Richard, how do you best adapt your training sessions to match the head coach's tactical style? Within our style of play, there are certain things that our goalkeepers must be good at. So for those of you that know the MLS, Philadelphia plays a pressing style. So it's very much based on the Red Bull style of possessional defending. So even when we're in possession, we've got players that are ready to attack should we lose possession. So immediate pressure on the ball. So our goalkeepers have to be good defending the space behind the back 4. Have to be good. So that's something that I looked at. I've done some research on the Red Bull philosophy. Our sporting director came from the Red Bull philosophy. So I do my best to prepare our goalkeepers in that environment. So that we have to be able to play the space behind. And obviously we've got to defend the goal area and then ultimately defend the goal. So anticipation, can that be learned? Absolutely, Ahmed, it can be learned. Anticipation can be learned, but it comes from repetition, from seeing different scenarios, from making decisions. So you can anticipate that if you see it. You can't anticipate it if you never see it in a game. I remember years ago, we were playing, the US women's national team were playing a friendly in California, and a ball kept going in between. We were playing against a men's team or a boys team, and the ball kept being played through the centre backs, and the players were running onto it and getting on the end and scoring. And at half time, we're 3-0 down in this warm-up game. And as a goalkeeper coach, obviously what happens? Well, the head coach turns around and questions you and says, well, what's going on? Why isn't she coming for the ball? And the answer is very simple. We haven't trained it. Is how can we hold the goalkeepers accountable for this if, as a team, we don't train it? So anticipation, we can build it, we can work on it within our small group, within our goalkeeping group, but then absolutely must be worked on within the team. And then for Glenn, I regularly watch the Man United goalkeepers. Yeah, Richard is actually a good friend of mine. Number 1 gets more service. Yeah, even Lee Grant, who isn't even in the squad. Yeah, absolutely. Great for morale, keeps everyone together. And if you don't do this and you're a head coach or even a goalkeeper coach and you control your environment as far as allowing numbers of goalkeepers into a pre-game training session, I can tell you over the course of the season, the rapport between you and the goalkeepers gets better. The rapport between each of the goalkeepers gets better. And again, it'll improve your whole environment. Last one, what's your opinion about the Synaptic? So the Synaptic strobe glasses, we use them. I think it's an incredible product. We use it, I would say, twice a week, sometimes just once a week. One of our goalkeepers, and I got this actually from Michael Rechner at Hoffenheim, one of our goalkeepers actually does it before he plays. He did it with our second team, and when he played for our first team, I did it with him as well. Just 20 different balls into the hands inside the locker room or inside a different space, not being hit very hard. They can be thrown prior to a game. But in our training, we do it. If I'm going to work on shot stopping in and around 12 yards or more of a reaction type situation, I will absolutely use them. I think they're very, very valuable in short doses. I would not go crazy and have them on for more than 15, 20 minutes, obviously taking them off in between reps. I believe that they're a good product, and actually I can't remember what it's called, but the wall that they have to touch as well for hand-eye reactions is exceptional. So coaches, we have gone way over what I said I would, so I really appreciate. I don't see anyone snoring, which is a good thing, or no one's asleep, so I appreciate that. Thank you to everyone who joined from all over the world. It's an honor and a privilege just to have a discussion with you. I apologize for having most people on mute and for locking the room or the meeting. But obviously last time we had a bit of a problem, so this time I didn't want to take that chance. If I can help you, please reach out to me. Please stay safe. Thank you everyone, and have a good night. Good night.